They expected Earth to beg. They expected threats, anger, maybe fear. Instead, the humans stood up, said nothing, and walked out of the Galactic Council. That was the moment the galaxy realized. Silence was humanity's final warning. Part 1. The Mockery. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Trade Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floor. Delegates from 200 species gathered beneath a dome that showed the stars themselves, each point of light representing a world under council authority. The air hummed with 1,000 different breathing patterns, filtered and mixed by atmospheric processors to keep everyone alive in the same space. Ambassador Chun stood at the presentation platform, a simple wooden podium that looked primitive compared to the floating energy constructs used by other species. She was human, middle-aged by Earth standards, wearing a plain gray suit that drew subtle sneers from delegates who adorned themselves with jewels that could buy planets. Behind her, 3 other humans waited quietly, their faces showing neither hope nor fear. Chun activated the holographic display with a simple hand gesture. Images of Earth appeared, showing cities, farms, research facilities, and the modest fleet of vessels humanity had built in their 2 centuries among the stars. Her voice was steady as she spoke. The United Earth government requests upgraded trade status and access to the quantum communication network. In exchange, we offer increased production of rare Earth elements, advanced medical research, and our unique perspective on problem solving. The first laugh came from the Vorith section. They were massive beings, each one weighing several tons, with thick armor plating that had evolved over millions of years. Their delegate, Warlord Krethix, slammed one enormous appendage against his rest platform. Medical research? His voice boomed through translators. You speak of medical research when your species lives barely 100 cycles? My youngest offspring has seen more seasons than your entire recorded history. Ripples of amusement spread through the chamber. The crystal Ishara chimed in resonance. Their version of laughter. The Mindweavers, beings of pure thought housed in mechanical frames, broadcast waves of condescending amusement directly into the minds of everyone present. Chun waited for the noise to fade. She did not argue. She did not defend. She simply continued. We also propose a cooperative research initiative on faster-than-light propulsion systems that do not rely on the Council Gate network. This time, the laughter was louder and more unified. High Merchant Velix of the Trade Consortium rose from his elevated seat. His species, the Aurelians, had controlled galactic commerce for 15,000 years. They were sleek, golden-skinned beings who moved with the confidence of those who had never known defeat. Independent FTL. Velix's voice dripped with false politeness. How charming. Humanity has been in space for 200 years. And you think you can improve on systems we perfected 50,000 years ago? Perhaps next you will teach the ancients how to manipulate matter, or show the Voidborn how to survive in hard vacuum. More laughter. Chun's fellow humans remained motionless, their expressions carefully neutral. They had expected this. They have been treated this way for decades. Velix was not finished. He descended from his platform, circling Chen like a predator examining prey. Let us be honest about Earth's position in this council. You are resource extractors. You are useful because your world contains materials we need and because your species breeds quickly enough to replace workers who die in hazardous occupations. You serve a purpose, but that purpose does not include having opinions about technology or policy. He paused, letting his words sink in. Your request is denied. Earth will maintain its current trade status. You will continue to supply rare elements at the rates we have established. You will continue to provide labor for stations and radiation zones where more valuable species should not risk themselves. And you will stop wasting our time with proposals above your station. The chamber fell silent. Every delegate waited to see how the humans would respond. Would they beg? Would they threaten? Would they storm out in anger like the Kryn had done 300 years ago, before the council had crushed their civilization into dust? Chun gathered her presentation materials slowly and carefully. She looked up at Velix and then let her gaze sweep across the entire assembly. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. Thank you for your time and consideration. That was all. No protest. No plea. No anger. She turned and walked toward the exit, her three companions falling in behind her. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. That is it. Krethix called after them. No threats? No demands? No speeches about human dignity? Chun stopped at the doorway. She turned back, and for just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Not anger. Not fear. Something else entirely. Something the council delegates could not quite identify. No, Warlord Krethix. No threats. We understand our position clearly now. Thank you for making it so plain. She left. The door sealed behind the human delegation with a soft hiss dot in the assembly hall. The delegates congratulated themselves. The Vorath delegation rumbled with satisfaction. The Aurelians preened, pleased with how efficiently they had handled the matter. The Mindweavers broadcast approval throughout the chamber. Humans know their place now, Velix announced. This is good. Order is maintained. The young species has learned respect. Everyone agreed. The matter was settled. The council moved on to other business, already forgetting the quiet humans who had asked for nothing more than a chance dot in the weeks that followed. Strange reports began to filter through council channels. Human merchant vessels were leaving trade stations early, their cargo holds half empty. Human workers on remote platforms were resigning in small groups, always with polite explanations and proper documentation. Human research teams were wrapping up their projects and departing, thanking their council supervisors for the opportunity to serve. At first, no one paid attention. Humans came and went all the time. They were short-lived creatures, always retiring or moving on to new assignments. It meant nothing, but then the pattern became clear. Human trade ships were not returning to their regular routes. Human colonies were submitting formal notices of withdrawal from council resource agreements. Human ambassadors at a dozen stations were quietly packing their offices and departing without fanfare. There were no angry messages, no declarations of independence, no military posturing, just a steady, systematic, quiet withdrawal from every council facility, every trade network, every cooperative venture. Within 60 days of that assembly, the human presence in council space had diminished by 30%. Within 90 days, it was 60%. Human vessels still obeyed all traffic laws. Human citizens still paid all outstanding debts. Human officials still filed all proper departure documentation. They were leaving. All of them, quietly, politely, completely. High Merchant Velix stood in his private office, staring at reports that made no sense. His finest analysts could not explain where the humans were going. Ships departed toward empty sectors, toward dead zones, toward regions of space that council surveys had marked as uninhabitable or worthless. He remembered Chen's face at that last moment in the doorway. That strange expression. He had thought it was defeat. Now, reviewing the data, watching humanity evaporate from council space like morning mist. He began to wonder if he had misunderstood completely. The humans had not been defeated in that chamber. They had been released. Released from any obligation to care what the council thought. Released from any need to argue or convince or beg. Released from the fiction that they needed the council at all. Velix felt something he had not experienced in his 300 years of life. A cold sensation that his species had no name for, because they had never needed one. The humans were not running away in fear. They were walking away in silence. And somehow that was infinitely more terrifying. The revelation 3 months after the assembly. High Merchant Velix called an emergency session of the council's inner circle. The grand meeting chamber was nearly empty now, with only the most senior delegates present. The stars in the dome above seemed dimmer somehow. Though the technology had not changed, Velix stood at the center platform, his golden skin pale with stress. Around him sat representatives from the oldest and most powerful species. Warlord Krethix of the Vorath, Mindweaver Prime 7th Thought, Crystal Chorus Master Sylvanus of the Shara. These were beings who had shaped galactic policy for millennia. They were not accustomed to looking concerned. They looked concerned now. The human population in council space has declined by 92%. Velix began without preamble. Of the 12 billion humans who were registered in our territory 6 months ago, fewer than 1 billion remain. Most of those are elderly, maintaining what they call historical sites and museums on Earth itself. Krethix shifted his massive bulk. They are fleeing. Perhaps they finally realize how small and weak they truly are. Let them run into the dark. They will come crawling back when they run out of food and fuel. That is what I thought too, Velix said quietly. But our intelligence services have discovered something disturbing. The humans are not running out of anything. In fact, they appear to have never needed us at all. He activated the central display. A map of known space appeared, showing Council territory in bright blue. It covered roughly 40% of the mapped galaxy, a vast empire that had taken 50,000 years to build. Then Velix added a new layer of data, and the chamber fell silent. Red dots appeared across the map. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. They clustered in regions marked as uninhabitable. They filled dead zones and radiation fields. They covered areas the Council had surveyed once and dismissed as worthless. These are confirmed human settlements, Velix said, his voice hollow. There are more we cannot confirm because our scouts cannot reach them. Current estimates place the human population outside Council space at somewhere between 80 and 120 billion individuals. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. Mindweaver Prime 7th Thought pulsed with confusion, broadcasting the emotion to everyone present. Impossible, the Mindweaver transmitted. We have tracked human expansion carefully. Their colony ships were primitive. Their fastest vessels could barely reach half-light speed. They could not have spread so far without us noticing. They have been spreading for 70 years, Velix replied. Small groups at first. A few thousand people on research missions that never came back. Retirement communities in sectors we never bothered to patrol. Family reunions on stations we never knew existed. They filed all the proper paperwork. They answered all our questions. They just never mentioned that they were building an entirely separate civilization while working for us. He changed the display again. Now it showed timelines tracking human movement over 7 decades. The pattern was clear when someone looked for it. Every human who left Council space had a legitimate reason. A scientific expedition. A family matter. A personal journey. None of them ever raised suspicion because none of them were technically doing anything wrong. They were hiding in plain sight, Sylvanas chimed, her crystalline voice resonating with something like respect. While we counted them as laborers and resource extractors, they were planting seeds across the entire galaxy. Velix nodded grimly. We found records of a meeting that took place 83 years ago. Human leaders gathered in secret and made a decision. They realized the Council would never accept them as equals. So they stopped trying to convince us. Instead, they started building something we could not touch. He pulled up an intercepted message, one of thousands that human ships had broadcast as they departed Council space. The words were simple. The door is open. Come when you are ready. Humanity remembers what it was like to be small. Krethix rumbled with anger. This is a rebellion. We should mobilize the fleet. We should burn their colonies to ash and remind them of their place. With what fleet? Velix asked softly. Warlord, have you checked your shipyards lately? The Vorith delegate went very still. Velix continued, each word landing like a hammer blow. The humans did not just leave. They took something with them. Knowledge. The engineers who maintained our vessels were human. The technicians who calibrated our weapons systems learned from human universities. The doctors who kept our crews healthy studied human medical techniques. We thought they were learning from us. We never asked what they were teaching each other. He pulled up maintenance reports from across Council space. Everywhere, the same story. Equipment failing, ships grounded, stations experiencing critical malfunctions. Not because of sabotage. Simply because the people who knew how to fix things had quietly departed, and they had never trained replacements. Worse, Bellick said. Other species are following them. New data filled the display. The Quilvin, an insectoid species that had processed fuel for council vessels for 8,000 years, had formally requested release from their contracts. The Dresh, aquatic beings who operated water reclamation systems throughout council space, were leaving enormous migration fleets. The Torn, the Velix, the Chorus Minor, dozens of client species were submitting departure notices. They're all going to the same place, Bellick said. Human territory. The humans are accepting every species that asks for refuge. No conditions. No servitude contracts. No hierarchy of superior and inferior. They're building something we never imagined possible. Mindweaver Prime's seventh thought's mechanical frame trembled. What are they building? A commonwealth, Alex answered. That is what they call it. The United Commonwealth of Free Worlds. Every species has equal representation. Every individual has rights that cannot be revoked. They have no client races because they believe no one should be a client. They have no slave worlds because they believe no one should be a slave. He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. And it works. Their economy is growing. Their technology is advancing. Their people are happy. We built our civilization on hierarchy and control. They built theirs on cooperation and respect. And somehow, impossibly, theirs is stronger. The chamber was silent for a long moment. These were beings who had ruled the galaxy for longer than most species had existed. They had never questioned whether their way was the right way. It simply was the way. The only way. The natural order of things. Now they were being shown that another way was possible. And worse, that other way was winning. Crystal Chorus Master Sylvanus spoke first, her tones complex and layered. I have studied human history. They're not a peaceful species. They have warred among themselves for their entire existence. Why do they not turn their aggression outward now that they are strong? Velix pulled up one final document. It was a speech given by Ambassador Chen 3 days ago at the founding ceremony of the Commonwealth Capital Station. The video showed her older now with gray in her hair, but her eyes held the same quiet strength they had shown in that council chamber. Her words played through the translation system. We remember what it felt like to be dismissed. We remember what it felt like to be used. We remember what it felt like to be treated as less than others simply because we were young. We built this commonwealth on one promise. No one will ever feel that way here. Not because we are better than those who hurt us, but because we refuse to become them. She had paused, looking directly at the camera. To the Galactic Council, we say this. The door is still open. When you are ready to meet as equals, we will welcome you. When you are ready to learn as we once learned, we will teach you. When you are ready to build something better together, we will be here. We do not hate you. We simply chose to walk away, and we invite you to walk with us whenever you are ready. The message ended. The council delegates sat in silence. They had mocked humanity for being young and weak. They had laughed at human ambition and human dreams. They had treated humans as resources to be exploited, never as people to be respected. And humanity had responded not with war or vengeance, but with patience. They had smiled and nodded and said, yes, sir, no, sir. And while the council congratulated itself on keeping humans in their place, humanity had quietly built a future the council could never touch. Felix looked at his fellow delegates. We face a choice. We can cling to the old ways and watch our civilization crumble as every client species follows humanity into the dark. Or we can do something none of us ever imagined possible. What? Krethix asked, his voice subdued. We can ask them to teach us, Felix said. We can walk through the door they have opened. We can admit that we were wrong about everything and start learning how to build something better. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. But looking at the data, at the exodus of species, at the slow collapse of everything the council had built, he knew there was no other choice. The moment to stop humanity had passed decades ago, when the first humans began their quiet migration into the unknown. The council had been too proud to notice, too certain of their superiority to see what was happening beneath their gaze. Now, The only moment left was the moment to follow, to humble themselves, to learn from the species they had mocked. High Merchant Velix, descendant of 15,000 years of galactic dominance, prepared to do the hardest thing he had ever done. He prepared to ask humanity for help outside the council chambers. Human ships continued their patient work, ferrying refugees to freedom, building stations in the dark, and proving that strength measured in kindness could outlast strength measured in control. The galaxy was changing. The old order was ending, and humanity, the young species that had been laughed at and dismissed, was showing everyone what the future could look like, one quiet choice at a time.